Welcome back to hour number 3. It's going to be fast-paced and dynamic. And believe me, you can go a lot of places on the internet, listening on radio and television. You're not going to hear anything more powerful and hard-hitting than what we say here in the Nutrimedical Report, Clay and Iron Show, all 4 hours now. And I can tell you, Deborah, you've been an amazing activist on a bunch of areas, on the smart meters area. And by the way, I'm preparing my final submissions to go to federal court on smart meters. So I will be filing personally, and again, I'm going to try to have it converted to a class action suit later, but once it's filed, we're going to make sure it's not getting kicked out of court. The second thing we have is we have a situation where I signed a petition today against to have the governor veto this bill that Richard Pan and the legislature push for forced vaccine, which is an abomination. And then we have the situation in the state of California where they tried to hide the real issue. In fact, the top institute in the world I talked to Paul Power, the senior geologist there, and Power, P-A-U-E-R, at the primarywaterinstitute.org. And he could only talk to me very briefly. He said he's going to call me some more this week, but I want to get him on the air. The science of primary water is going back thousands of years, and you've done some great research on this. Tell us what's going on, because the legislature here in California is hell-bent, literally hell-bent. I mean, I think now I'd like to see some research to find out if Jerry Brown and some of these members of the legislature belong to a satanic coven, because what the hell is going on?
Well, what is going on is the depopulation by poisoning the water supply, creating the idea that we're running out of water when we have primary water, which is in abundance, the process of water being continuously created down below the mantle of the earth. I urge everyone to go to the website, primarywater.org. We have many YouTubes up that will explain how water is perpetually created, pure, clean, juvenile water that has never been exposed to the atmosphere.
Right. I'm going to give a 2 or 3 minute kind of explanation from all of my research, and I spent many hours this weekend alone, plus the last few weeks. But this weekend I really spent a lot of time. Steve Jacobson is a senior geologist at Northwestern University. Looked at Paul Power's site, Primary Water Institute, many other places, and your site and all your links. And here's the summary. There's a mineral called ringwoodite. That's present down at 400 to 700 kilometers, and the amount of water stored in the rock, which is roughly 1%, is more than all the oceans and all the lakes and all the clouds in the world. That's stored in the form of hydrogen and oxygen in its elemental forms, and when it comes out, it forms primary water that has no tritium. And there's no tritium in it.
That's right.
And when it comes out, it forms cracks and fissures in the upper mantle that actually come to the surface. And all the oases on Earth and all the primary geysers, like this geyser in Nevada that I was looking at,
Fly Geyser, FLY, for people that have not looked at that.
Yeah, Fly Geyser. I'm going to post a link up on that. So anyway, all these geysers and all the oases across the North Africa where there's not a drop of rain. So you can't say it's in the hydrological cycle that it rains and then it concentrates in this oasis. Bull crap. Okay? The fact is that all the water on the Earth... I watched this stupid video thing about 5 years ago. The NASA was trying to say that all the water in the oceans came from comets landing on the Earth. What a pile of crap. Do you know how many comets would require landing on the Earth? There wouldn't be any Earth. It would be smashed to pieces if that many comets hit the Earth. It's
they're
not
trying
realistic.
to, again, dispense falsified science and create a water shortage out of thin air, just as they have created and certainly fooled us all into phony fiat debt currency, now moving us into the exchange of cap and trade, the exchange of carbon and air.
What I want to say here is that what you've done here is really important. People need to realize there's a thing in the Bible that talks about, and Jesus talked about, 2 in the field and 1 is taken. The term that I'm using now, and one that's biblical, is the great taking. The great taking is happening here in California. It's happening in Texas. It's happening where they're screwed up the northern jet stream to the point now with the drilling at the Macondo drill site and the geoengineering the upper atmosphere that they've screwed up the weather so bad on purpose so they can create massive famine. And by the way, these radiation levels that are increasing at ground level are pushing the mutation and the gene drift of things like H5N2, which is now causing the cost of eggs. My wife just went this weekend. The cost of eggs in California went up twice, 200% increase in 1 week. And in central United States and the East Coast, it's gone up 300%. And that's because they killed 20 million egg-laying chickens. Now people say, well, how's that tie with geoengineering? Well, when you screw up the climate and you cut out the ozone layer and you have increased radiation levels in the ground with ultraviolet light, you push the mutation of the viruses so you get more pathogenic viruses quicker. So what's going on, by the way, right now is they're going to create an artificial famine. They're going to...
Yes.
Go.
That's exactly right, and to bring in GMO, because certainly by reducing the sunlight, they're already cutting down on the food supply anyway. But what I wanted to talk about, of course, was our call to action. So for everyone that's listening, please go to primarywater.org, download the half-page double-sided flyers, get the truth about water out as far and wide as quickly as you possibly can. Don't be fearful that we're running out of water. In fact, Dr. Bill, I understand that if they were to release the upward pressure coming up from under the mantle and allow and take and utilize this water, primary water, which accounts for every single drop of water that we see on the surface of the planet, that they could reduce seismic activity.
Right.
So
in fact,
what we know is that they are allowing this pressure to come up and create larger chaos. And what we also know with the entire water scam is that they're poisoning it. They're poisoning the water to reduce the populations, and they want us into reuse. It's very, very important to understand we are talking about sewer to tap. And what we know is that as the shortages escalate and people become more fearful and fear-based because they don't understand the water science, attitudes towards water reuse will change, and people will gladly drink sewer water. And even the watering of plant material and alfalfa fields, etc., with this reused water is poisonous and toxic.
And by the way, it'll poison the food supply to the rest of the country, because 90% of the veggies and other foods come from California. One of our primary industries is agricultural, and they've laid fallow now 500,000 acres already. And this governor needs to be impeached and removed and put in a psych ward. So do people like Richard Penn and the other pro-vaccine maniacs. They don't want to deal with primary water, and the main institute in the whole world is here in California, in Northern California, in Eureka, California.
Well,
there's no excuse for this.
I want to add a few things about what's happening here about the water in Northern California, only so that everyone that's listening, Dr. Bill, will understand what's coming their direction. Because it takes tremendous amount of hours and looking at all the information to be able to say what I'm going to be talking about right now. First, I want to just say there's a document in November of 1978. It's entitled Efficient Water Use in California, Water Rights, Water Districts, and Water Transfers. And this came out of the RAND Corporation. The RAND Corporation in Santa Monica, California, is also behind the Delphi technique in bringing the illusion and creating the illusion through their meeting strategies and styles of creating water shortage. This document talks about how the Rockefeller Institute contributed grant money to fund all of this as well. We have to go to the YouTube, Dr. Bill, that I put together. At the time, I stuffed it full of documents. It still remains, as far as I'm concerned, something that needs to be looked at by more people. It's called Water Wars, Stealing Water for Profit and Power, because I have in the Seymour, underneath the YouTube, two extremely important documents about the U.S. water market and how the ultimate plan is for water reuse. In other words, water treatment plants and desalinization to push the water costs up even higher. I think it's very important for people to understand their water trading. This is creating a whole new market. This is what's occurring here. Reusing the water, killing us, creating larger pharmaceutical profits, and killing us in the process. I wanted to just talk about some letters that we've received personally here in Northern California in Sonoma County that's affecting groundwater watershed supplies. And this is going to be the type of affront that everyone else is going to be dealing with wherever you are in whatever state you're in. Do not think just because California...
And we're back with Deborah Tavares. And Deborah, this is like... it's hard to believe we're actually going through this stuff right now. But, the problem is the people that won't even check out the documents to actually know what the state is publishing and what's happening with the weather. The thing that's really shocked people, and we're going to talk about this if we can get our studios up at Rents for the 4th hour. Apparently they had a power spike and they're trying to scramble to see if their Comrexes and everything are fried. But what's going on is people don't understand. We, on this program, the Nutrimedical Report, deal with harder issues with more Tier 1 science and more really nasty stuff than anybody anywhere on this or any other network. You need to know that out there. That's why we moved up to number 3 in the Genesis network. That's why we are hitting issues harder and there's more and more threats and attacks. And now the fact is, this issue is one of the fulcrum issues to cause a catastrophe and a collapse of the United States. If they can get away with this drought...
That's exactly right.
This is it. This is number 1.
In fact, I want to just go over a couple of things in a recent letter that an area here in Sonoma County, which, by the way, we now call it grape to glass and sewer to tap, because they're largely beating the drum roll for reused water.
Oh, God.
But having said that, and poisoning us, they want to fluoridate the water supply here as well. But having said that, here's a letter from the California Water Board dated June the 9th. They talk about the proposed drought emergency and the regulation requiring enhanced water conservation and water user information for the protection of specific fisheries in the Russian River tributaries. Now, everyone that's listening, the Russian River flows along the edge of Bohemian Grove. This is Rockefeller-controlled waters. Rockefeller has the water rights through PG&E of the Lake Pillsbury Reservoir north of Sonoma County that supplies Sonoma County with the water as well as Marin. Now, in this letter that we received well over a week after it was dated, after the public meeting that we were being advised of in this letter had already occurred. The letter is about this. They talk about the ongoing drought emergency and the impact of fish, and there was to be a public meeting of which no one received this letter till after the public meeting. But for all of you that don't realize it, public meetings, the idea of a public opportunity is to continue the illusion of representation.
Right,
so
Delphi
that they can
technique.
keep this game going. That's exactly right. And remember, the
Delphi.
Rand Corporation is involved in taking our water as well.
Right.
But having said that, it says this: the imposed emergency regulation would require, number 1, all landowners within the watersheds must provide information on their source and use of water. Now, I want to stop right there, Dr. Bill, and tell everybody, do not fill out any information, do not give any data on your water usage or your source of water on rural lands if you have wells. Do not. And start considering building a well house around your well pump to secure your water so they can't slap some type of a smart meter on you. The second item they say is enhanced conservation measures by users of water sourced from the watersheds. They go on. The proposed emergency regulation would also prohibit new groundwater wells or surface diversions. I want to talk about surface diversions. Any and every single drop of water that is diverted from what they claim is necessary to keep the coho salmon and the steelhead alive is potentially killing the fish, ending the species. Any single drop. Now, they're saying that it's okay if we use gray water to water our ornamental turf, but that we have to also look at not having annual plants. Well, fruits and vegetables are annual plants. Our food supply is being taken over right now here in the San Joaquin Valley. We know through executive orders that the government has and now is massively launching towards reduction of food, particularly any nuts, plums, pomegranates, other types of vegetables, pears, even raisins. They're starting to minimize the ability for us to access the kinds of food we need for good health. Because as they continue to poison us by the air, water, sea, and food, they certainly do not want us to access the types of foods that will allow us some level of continued survival. So it's important to understand that food vouchers will likely be issued as part of the maneuvering of us off the rural lands into the confinement centers called resilient cities. Now, Dr. Bill, I did some research on resilient cities. For everybody that's listening, I would certainly recommend that you do the same. Look into this. What is a resilient city? Well, there's hundreds of them all over the globe. They were pioneered by Rockefeller. The idea of resilient cities was to move us all into these cities, was based on two pillars. The first pillar was we needed to reduce our CO2 emissions first and foremost on every level. But Dr. Bill, you and I know, the documents tell us, we could reduce our CO2 levels to zero tomorrow. It would not change the weather because they control the weather. This entire climate change situation is genocide policies followed by massive wealth redistribution. And we're talking about taking all the wealth of all the resources and distributing it and dividing it amongst those that will control and profit by it. And they're decimating societies across the planet. We see that certainly in many documents that we read out of Africa, for example, how climate change is going to massively affect the Arab world and their vulnerability to climate change. Climate change has and is the capability of manipulating the weather and worse, also the psychotronic weapons systems as well. We're being assaulted from every single direction. They're adding chloramine to the water supply. That's in chlorine. Chloramine.
Chloramine is 100,000 times more toxic than chlorine to create DNA adducts.
That's exactly right. Yeah. We're being poisoned by the water supply and the reuse. So
which is why we have the pure water system that'll completely pull all this garbage out. Berkey won't. Any other system won't to pull all these radiotoxins, etc. And the problem is point of use is the only way you can be certain that the water has not been poisoned. In places like Orange County, they have literally microchip factories there, and the doping agents we know are incredibly genotoxic. And they're also basically are emasculating. They actually change men into women. People don't realize this. I call it the Bruce generation. How's that? Do you like that, generation?
Well, that's exactly what is happening. Our genes are being changed. They're eliminating our capability to breed and to continue with human life. I was just reading about a marriage between robots that just occurred here in the last few days in Japan.
What?
So what we're facing?
Hey, whoa! Just a second now. You're saying that they actually did a formal ceremony between robots? Come on.
Yes,
really?
They did.
No.
Well, yes, they did. As a matter of fact, what we're talking about, as you so well understand, Dr. Bill, is the battle for the very survival of the human race and nothing less.
Yeah. Let me go over the cities that are in this resilient cities and actually pull up the site where we're talking.
Resilient cities, as I was saying, was pioneered by Rockefeller. The two pillars, again, the first pillar was that we needed to massively reduce our CO2 emissions to affect and change the climate so that we would stop seeing decimated cities and areas from all the storm events. And we have a very important YouTube up. It's called KILL, K-I-L-L, ARC, A-R-K, Storm, S-T-O-R-M, KILL ARC Storm. Watch that because we filmed on location a USGS presentation via PowerPoint on the weaponization and the cost to California's economy when all of these increase.
Back we have Deborah Tavares. And Deborah, you have a link for YouTube. It's called KILL space ARC, A-R-K. Is it A-R-K or A-R-C?
A-R-K.
KILL ARC Storm. And I'm trying to find the actual thing here. The one I see at the top here is Stop the Crime. This is a new one from 6 months ago. Is that the one you're talking about, KILL ARC Storm?
I'm going to have to pull that up. But for everybody that wants to see it, just type in your YouTube channel.
It looks like a PowerPoint, actually. It looks like it has a guy looking at a screen. KILL ARC Storm.
It.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm looking at it right now, and it's actually KILL ARC, A-R-K, and Storm is connected to ARC. So don't leave a space. Storm, S-T-O-R-M-S, and then it says mass quakes, shakeouts planned for the West Coast, and this is a scenario. Now, this was presented by the USGS. Everyone needs to understand the intention of the weaponized weather programs and what that is really all about. This is how.
And
they're
what are
going
those
to
intentions? What are those intentions? Are they good intentions or satanic ones?
Well, if you call wiping out communities, killing people, destroying neighborhoods, destroying homes, flooding out the agriculture, flooding out the infrastructure, creating a little quake here and there, just for a little shake amongst all this trauma that is being intentionally created, and then forcing us into these resilient cities. Now, I will explain what resilient cities are really all about.
Right.
Again, it was pioneered by Rockefeller. Resilient cities mean that you're going to be in an area where you will be encouraged to become more resilient in your thinking about the increased weather events that are our fault because we did not reduce our CO2 emissions adequately. So as a result of our doing, we must now emotionally become resilient. In other words, we must learn to rebound from shock, the shock of the horrific weather weaponized events that is occurring all over the world. We're talking about the droughts. We're talking about the laser earthquakes. We're talking about the fires that are being created through dead and diseased and dying forests, and all of the polluted air and atmosphere. It's our fault, and we must be resilient in our thinking. If you are not able to be resilient, if it's called mismanagement of your emotions, then you're going to be eligible for drugs to help you deal with your inability to cope with the shocks that all of us have been responsible for creating. That's what resilient cities are. This is what the plan is. They're going to be chasing us out of our communities, out of rural areas, for people that are afraid. They will be chasing people that are not aware of the reality. And people will run. They will run. Just like I'm hearing calls right now, Dr. Bill, for people to vacate California because of the water. No, do not listen to people that are purveyors of that type of information. They're probably COINTELPRO, and they're working with one of the largest land thefts in history, and that's to steal the real estate from California. This is all PSYOPs. This is all PSYWAR. We have plenty of water. Now, Dr. Bill, I discovered something interesting, and I wanted to quickly go over this. It's very important. About a week or so ago, we were hearing here in California about a town called Mountain House, M-O-U-N-T, like mountain, Mountain House, running out of water. Now, Mountain House is outside of Tracy, California, not that far from San Francisco, and it was a city designed to be a transition area for people that needed to be close enough to San Francisco in the Bay Area. And the property was acquired by Rothschild in the early 2000s. It sat through the collapse of the bubble of real estate. Now values have returned. Mountain House is it's really a community that is run by a board of directors. It's not a community that has a municipality like you would think of your city or city hall. This is a staged community. Again, it's a planned community. It's a UN Agenda 21 smart town. So when you look at Mountain House and the fact that nationwide we were being told that Mountain House was going to run out of water in 24 hours, they'd have no water. Now, they have 9,800 homes there. Again, they're on the rebound. But what's really behind Mountain House, besides staging the increased fear of running out of water, we have to look at what also is part of the cover-up. And we discovered that, of course, we know that the international bankers never miss an opportunity to take people's savings. And what we found in Mountain House is they invented this crisis to conceal the theft of retirement funds. And what do I mean by that? Well, we discovered that CalPERS, which is California Public Employees Retirement System pension funds, has an investment of public pension funds reported at $91 billion in Mountain House. This was in 2004. This was prior to the real estate bubble. $1 billion of public pension funds. Well, Mountain House, interestingly enough, became the number one city in America that had the highest rate of home foreclosures, property that was underwater. Well, they've managed through this increase recently, this false increase in real estate, to recover that aspect of their funds. But now they're saying this man-made water crisis is putting the recovery at risk. This is what one of the representatives from CalPERS is saying. And he called the situation a potentially graver threat to Mountain House's future than the housing burst. So what we have is a spokesman for CalPERS who's saying the pension fund is being they're monitoring the situation and they won't comment further. This is the theft of retirement funds because this entire community is a UN Agenda 21 community. So when you hear about staged PSYOPs media campaigns, investigate the beginnings of these cities. Find out if it's a smart city. Find out if it was built under UN Agenda 21. Type in their policies to enact reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That will tell you the story. In fact, I can tell you right now, Dr. Bill, you and I were talking during the break about the CDC, and on the website we found some very disturbing information. We know that the CDC is a shield for the planned bioterrorism and the planned assaults against humanity.
Well, you know that I renamed it, right? It's called the Center for Disease Creation.
Well, that's exactly right. And we do have a YouTube, Dr. Bill. It's called Vaccines, Forced Vaccinations. Again, Vaccines, Forced Vaccinations. It's up on YouTube.
Right.
You can go to the YouTube channel on our website, stopthecrime.net, scroll down to the YouTube icon, and you can take a look at all of the various YouTubes that we're putting up. We're putting up many YouTubes on a regular basis. But what I wanted to say is, and you brought it up in the opening of the program, the vaccination bill here in California. We know that it's going to get passed. We know that they are going to force vaccinations because of parens patriae. Parens patriae clearly tells us in Latin, as you said.
Yeah, but it's not just for children, by the way. They're going to start trying to force it on adults. In fact, Kaiser, which I currently have Kaiser Insurance, it's a good term for them because they're like dictators. There's some things about Kaiser I like. Other things I think are pretty horrendous, which means they were going to pass out vaccine information a few years ago that would target what we call vaccine deniers in the population so that they could be turned over to the state. So that information can be handed over by your health insurance carrier and by your doctors directly to the state to literally try to have health enforcement officers come to your home or school to try to enforce vaccinations. If they have a vaccine for me, I have one for them, but it contains lead. You know,
well,
at some point, this is going to have to get, at some point, and people say, oh, you can't propose that. Well, I'm saying we need to push back with petitions and legal actions, etc. But eventually, this is going to get to the point where people are going to go beyond the point where they can no longer just not resist. They're going to have to resist.
Well, we're going to have to refuse to sign on to these contracts.
Exactly, yeah. And by the way, a little notice, we had a power surge over on the Rents Network. The show has knocked out, so we're going to move Ann Morrison over to the first hour or third hour tomorrow. Major medical report, and of course we want to take your specific questions on any topic whatsoever. And people need to understand this. We were trying to provide you here a level of ability to manage your health care like you've never had before. It's important to understand that this is exactly what we're trying to do here at Nutrimedical is make you Dr. You. And the book Dr. You is going to discuss a number of things. The first, it's going to explain what a living thing is and what your health is. And health is not just a lack of symptoms. Health is we call optimized wellness, where your biochemistry, your genetic expression, the lack of toxins to interfere with your genetics, the presence of nutrients that have been literally created that jump a gene defect which you may have had through your ancestry, or toxic blockades because of heavy metals, chemicals, etc., that can block enzymatic processes, no longer is interfering. And that's what's really important for people to understand, is that we're not doing symptom-based treatment. We're going well beyond that to pathophysiological abnormalities we call functional medicine. This is what we call living pathology. And it's very unique. It's a new science. In fact, the Dr. U book is going to empower you, just like the jurisdictionary course with Dr. Fred Graves that teaches you procedure and rules of evidence, which are 34 pages, I think, roughly, of rules of procedure for federal and state court. and only about 10 pages of rules of evidence that if you master those, just like the principles we're teaching here in this program, you don't have to know about every disease and every pathology, but if you know and can follow the protocols, as I put up more and more wellness conditions and put out the first book of Dr. U, which I'm hoping will be ready for us by July, the July 4th holiday special, then you'll get the level of empowerment to know at the first level what you need to do as you call first level health professional, what things are safe in terms of medicine, what surgery is safe and not safe, what nutraceuticals and why you have to have them customized and literally jump to the activated form and a delivery system that's going to work in your body, not just pretend by putting it on the label. You want to be able to know what tests you can test to see if what you're taking is actually working, whether it's advanced conventional testing, blood work, urine, stool, genetic tests like 23andMe and Prometheus to analyze your data, nonlinear analysis like the QRMA or bioplasm, how you confirm it with other testing such as imaging studies, organic acids in urine, intermediate metabolites, immunotoxicology testing that can determine if, for example, if you have Lyme disease, you have a mitochondrial dysfunction, if you've got heavy metals, if you've got organic acids indicating post-traumatic brain injury after a trauma, there's going to be organic acid changes. I provide all of that. And what we're doing with the wellness conditions, I'm going to be bumping it up a bunch of notches. You'll see a number of things that are more advanced reference material in each of the wellness conditions. You're going to see a much more information in the wellness book, the Dr. U book, even in the wellness conditions, so that book will have more information. It'll contain also hyperlinks directly to video clips, etc., to research, and we may even be having full conferences and cut and paste articles and so on that you can actually see video and other materials. So it's going to be very dynamic. As it develops over the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see the Dr. U book series and the video clips and everything it's linked to become a major tool to change medicine. It'll be tied to our development of newer technologies like the latest advances of diagnostics with the QRMA, the 8D-LRIS and 8D-LRIS 3D, which we're working on developing the next generation. Dr. Michael Chen, the engineer from China, Dr. Wang and his colleagues will be coming out after they're now in India at the institute there in Delhi, India. They'll be coming out to actually visit and do some further advancement of the technology with me here in California. What you need to know is that we're on the cutting edge. We do the show so we get a platform to tell you about these technologies because we want you to pull the science of functional medicine forward. And there'll be a number of health professionals around the world, professional trainers, chiropractors, naturopaths, MDs, subspecialists that want to be better as a neurosurgeon so they don't get post-traumatic brain swelling caused by trauma of surgery itself, to relieve of meningiomas or relieving pressure from post-traumatic spinal cord injury so we can stop gliosis of the cord. We have protocols for virtually everything, for how to recover from cardiac arrhythmias and atrial fibrillation, to how to stop chronic fatigue syndrome, how to deal with early Alzheimer's disease with demyelination, how do we quantitatively measure what's going on there with quantitative EEG, SPECT blood flow scans, and a positron emission tomographic scans, organic acids to look at brain function and myelination, and T1 weighted MRI scans to look at the myelin pattern in different neural tracts in the brain. And the quantitative EEG, what it does is measures the specific voltages across the cortex, the areas of coherence in terms of frequency coherence, in terms of statistical frequency matching to create a neural network, and how the brain works. And I explain that in kind of rudimentary terms, but if people want more specific and more advanced scientific, technical information, I can explain that to them. And unfortunately, most, even scientists and neuroscientists, don't know what a neuron is. They don't know how the brain really records or how to hack into the brain, which is also dangerous because DARPA and other organizations are spending trillions of dollars to hack into the human consciousness, whether it's through commercials or big blockbuster movies or what I call massaging the psyche of the global population of people in the various, what I call, instead of calling them nations, the one we call them the farm of America, the farm of Britain or Canada, because they treat everyone now like farm animals. And I don't. I treat you like a sovereign human being made in the image of the Most High God. And that needs to change dramatically, that we start taking a little bit different approach to what a human being is. And how important this is to understand that. When we look at the kind of the issues that make people well sick, for example, I just had a recent consultation with a gentleman who picked up an ATLRS for his disabled son. Well, he will have a QRMA test and his history and his ATLRS, and then I can actually log on to TeamViewer 10 and actually look at the spectral pattern sections through different target organs and tell him exactly what's wrong with his pathology. When I looked at our gentleman yesterday who had a bioplasma NLS done, and he had actually one of the machines at thousands of miles away from here, we were able to analyze. I was able to look at his spectral pattern and say, you've got degenerative hip problems, you have signs that are frequency matching for a potential laryngeocarcinoma, and you have signs that there may be hidden vascular disease and other problems present. Also, right shoulder, rotator cuff, long biceps tendinitis. All those are identified on the bioplasma NLS, so it's pretty dramatic when you can do that. We can actually diagnose that. I had a recent consult with a individual who not only got a QRMA, but they sent it on themselves, their brother, and also a lady. And she, literally after they sent the QRMA test, they said, well, she just got cancer and got a real recent diagnosis. I said, well, here's the protocol to deal with the cancer, which is a big issue. And people need to know that we can help, whether it's an acute cancer or cancer prevention if you've already had treatment for it. We can help with all kinds of conditions. So we have temporal arteritis, where you've got inflammation and antibodies against the temporal arteries and the arteries that supply the brain circulation. So you need to reduce arterial inflammation. You need to reduce blood viscosity. You need to restore anti-inflammatory fatty acids. You need to restore brain microcirculation so you don't end up with a stroke or a area of malperfusion of different parts of the brain. So we can do that, and we can prove that what we're talking about works with recommendations for advanced imaging as well as the functional medicine test. So this is not just herbology or playing around the edges of it. No, we're talking about the center core of how functional medicine works. When people ask, what diet do you recommend? Well, firstly, the paleo diet never existed. Need to be realized, no cavemen ever eat the paleo diet. Our carbohydrates are toxic because when you have rapidly absorbed sugar, which we've had 100 years ago when you used to have bread, it would take a day to absorb it. It would have tiny little micro rocks in it. You want a low-carbo diet. I call the best overall plan is the George Cruz diet, combined with our drinks like glycemics and the carbo blocker, which is far better than acarbose, which doctors prescribe. Leptin metabolic, which will actually reverse the insulin resistance and lipoflush. Diabetoline, Minerals Plus, Chromium Cruciferate, and Biotin Plus. What I like is a combination of a smoothie of glycemics, life support, NutriComplete, and ageless. Amazing. We'll be back in a moment with hour number 3, and we'll have John on for a while, and then Mark Kaplan, a brand new guest, amazing topics, and we're going to talk about, how can I say it, spiritual survival and all the things connected with that. Coming up tomorrow, amazing new programs. You don't want to miss it. Call at any time for your question or comment, 800-259. And this Wednesday, John B. Wells from Caravan to Midnight will be on the program in hour 3.